No lawnmower carbs here, guys. People keep writing in about this 40 mile per gallon lawnmower carburetor project that this guy did on another YouTube channel. Yeah, I know, it's neat. I get it. It's a cool experiment. Totally not what we're into. This is what we're into, and this is the final stages of the Slaghammer build. Motor's all buttoned up, and the only thing left to do now is these carburetors. So we have a kind of unique situation with this, in that when we decided to send this car and Mopar Al out into the world to do power tour, gas was like $2 a gallon. And it's like, you know, all right, well, it is what it is. Well, since then, it's more than doubled. And there's a good chance it'll be even more expensive a couple of weeks from now when this whole thing starts. This car has got to go 2,000 miles, like round trip, by the time everything is said and done. Gas mileage is going to be an issue, clearly, right? Maybe, maybe not. So here's what we're doing with this. I called my buddy Andy Wood, Unity Motorsports Garage. So as you know, there's Casper, his truck, the one we're racing Bottle Rocket against at the No Name Nationals. So Casper's claim to fame is that not only is it blisteringly fast, the truck is just ridiculously fast, but he's got a tunnel ram, 394-inch Ford in it. And he knocks down, on the highway, he knocks down 16 plus miles to the gallon. 16 miles to the gallon with this setup right here. In a truck that weighs 4,000 pounds and has got a pretty steep gear. I don't know what gear it is. It's probably in a 430 range. Andy, correct me if I'm wrong. So I says, well, you know what? We're going to get a tune-up from Andy. And Andy did us right once before when we was trying to sort out Plan Z over here. She was a dead fat pig. And he made some suggestions and sent us some restrictors and blanks. We followed his instructions and like perfect, okay? So that's what we're gonna do here. So I called up Andy, I says, Andy, give me a tune-up, which is kind of ironic because a week before, I have an old friend, Rocky Perrone. He's up there in Pennsylvania. He's got a Nostalgia Funny car, and he called me for a quickie tune-up on his Nostalgia Funny car. So now I'm calling Andy for a tune-up on the tunnel rim. See how friends work together? We all, right? Okay. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do, and I'm going to explain to you why. So these are the carburetors. It's a pair of 600 vacuum secondary carburetors. The same ones that you would get, I mean, it's the typical $40 swap meet carburetor, and both of these are unknown to me, right? I have no idea even where they came from. I just have random carburetors just appear and disappear in my life, and this is a pair of them that I just snatched out of the ether and plucked on top of here. So now we're going to go through them. And on the primary side of both of these carburetors, we're going to employ Andy's tune-up. So now let me explain how this works. These carburetors from the factory, the way they're calibrated is for use single 4-barrel, you know, all by itself. Now, when you double these things up, what happens is at idle and small throttle openings, like when you just into the transfer slot, the motors will go dead fat. And that's where that whole cliche, and we did a video about this, we did a whole video about this, that's where that cliche about dual quads don't run, tunnel rams don't run on the street. It's because people don't take the time, because you'll always see they'll do these intake manifold shootouts and whatnot, and they'll throw a tunnel ram on there with a pair of carburetors and the power actually falls off. And it's because they never bother to actually work the carburetors to suit the, and I'm not talking about any West Coast TV guys or anything like that, right? They never bother to tailor the carburetors to the use. So they just take a pair of carburetors that are intended for single 4-barrel use, drop them on a tunnel ram, and now the engine is a dead fat pig and it just doesn't want to run. So in order to make these things work, there are two areas that you have to go into, right? And here, let me pop this bowl off of here real quick, and I'll show you. I pre-loosened everything. There we go. So right here, these holes right here are for the idle mixture, okay? And then these holes right here are for the transfer slot. So what we're going to do now, these holes are opened up, sized to calibrated for a single 4-barrel manifold. So when you go with dual quads, you have to cut that back, otherwise the engine is getting twice the fuel it should at idle and just off idle. Dead fat pig. So let's go over here. So the tune-up that Andy gave us here is idle feed restriction, and those are those top holes. He wants to see 30 to 28 thousandths of an inch in the restrictor. And then for the transfer slot, 65 to 70 thousandths. And then in the main jets, 66, 67 thousandths. So we're going to shoot, I'm going to shoot for the skinny side of everything. And we're going to go to 28 thousandths for the idle feed restriction, and we're going to go 65 on the transfer slot and 66s on the mains. So here's the process that goes with this. What we're going to do is we're going to drill. We're going to drill this hole and this hole right here for these restrictors, and tap them for these little restrictors right here. Okay, so that's a blank. There's no hole in there. So now we have to drill each of these to the size that Andy had called for. And once those are in place, we'll effectively be cutting the fuel flow in half. The idle fuel flow and the transfer slot, the amount of fuel the motor is going to be pulling through both of those circuits, we're going to be cutting those in half. And since we're doubling the amount of carburetors, well, that should balance out to a single 4-barrel, or the amount of fuel that it's going to get through a single 4-barrel. Now, throttle opening is going to play a part in this. There's how far the throttle's got to be opened, how far into this transfer slot, the secondary throttle opening. So now remember, on these carburetors, the secondaries, they don't have jets or anything. There's no metering block on the secondaries. It's just a plate. But their throttle blades are still partially open. So here's where the tuning and the trial and error roll comes from. After we've opened up the holes, tapped them, put the restrictors, the drilled restrictors in, now we have to figure out where the engine is going to idle its best, whether we're going to have to close the blades down and drill holes for air, extra air to come through the blades, or we're going to have to open or close the secondary side. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of tuning involved in this. Having an AFR meter would help. I don't have one. We're going to tune it because I've done this stuff by ear my whole life, by ear and by smell and by feel. So I'm going to go ahead and do it that way. But there is a bunch of trial and error to come in getting all of this working right. But all of that comes after we've done our thing here with these. And of course, we've got our jet set. You always want to pick up these. These are actually a bargain. You buy them from Holley, they're expensive, but you can buy these non-stick blue gaskets, and they come with the screw gaskets in bulk for like 20 bucks. I got these off of eBay. You definitely want to invest in a set of those. Also, what we're going to do is we're going to check the flatness. These carburetors are known for having warped throttle, the body itself. They're known for being warped, so we're going to take a straight edge across these, make sure they're flat, and if they're not, we're going to file them flat before we do anything else. There's a bit of work that has to go into all of this, but you get the general idea. We're going to go with an idle restrictor, and we're going to go with a transfer slot restrictor, get the volume of fuel down here, and then from that point, it's a matter of tweaking and tuning until we finally get the right mixture. And hopefully this thing can get, I don't know if we're going to get 16, but we could get close. We'll see what happens. So that's it. Let me get to work on this stuff, and within a couple of days, this thing will be running, and we'll go to the next step, and I'll show you all of the things that we did. So that's it. I hope you got something out of that. I'll see you tomorrow.